There's very few cars that you can draw really, really crudely and everybody knows exactly what you're talking about. You put a box shape on wheels, everybody will see it and understand you mean a Volkswagen Microbus. And that's what I'm gonna drive today, a 1967 21-window VW bus, and it's one of my favorite cars of all time, so I'm thrilled. I'm gonna drive it around and talk about it an awful lot, so welcome to Torch Drives. The bus is actually a fascinating vehicle. It's technically called the Volkswagen Type 2 Transporter. And what makes it really interesting is that it's really the first vehicle that Volkswagen, as the company we know it today, ever developed. I should explain, because we all think the Beetle, of course, was the first. But technically, the Beetle was developed before Volkswagen was a company. Originally, the Beetle was the KDF wagon, the strength-through joy car developed under the Nazis and all that complicated mess. But the bus was the first one that was actually developed after the war, after the British took over the factory, and after VW, as its own company, was established. They realized that in post-war Europe, what was really needed was some kind of commercial vehicle, because the economy was rebuilding. All these little businesses were starting, and they needed a way just to haul their stuff from place to place so they could sell it to people to get money to make the economy run. They needed a small utility vehicle, vans and trucks. But a Dutch importer, a guy named Ben Pon, he knew this was needed. He was touring the VW factory and he saw these little machines that they had built from VW Beetle pans called Platten wagons, which were basically a Beetle engine and a chassis with like a pickup bed in the front. It was like a reverse pickup truck. And that gave him the idea that the Beetle might be enough of a platform to turn into a van. So he made a very crude sketch, basically just a loaf of bread shape with wheels on it and a box in the back to stick the engine. And that became the genesis of what the bus would become. And if you look at the bus, that's all it really is. It's a big box on wheels with the engine tucked in the back. Every bit of this design, every bit of the space inside here is usable for you or your stuff. All of the area that normally would be taken up by a hood in a conventional van is you just sitting here. And then around the back, so you have the engine in this area here, but you still have a cargo area on top of the engine. And you can see the flat 4 Beetle type engine is right under here. And the early engines were the only ones VW had at the time. The 1200cc, 25 horsepower engine. 25 horses wasn't a hell of a lot. In fact, buses never had that much horsepower. They're always slow. By the time this 1967 one came around, there's a 1500cc engine making 50-ish horsepower. But what they did that was really clever is they took the portal axles used in the Kugelwagen, the wartime version of the VW, which gave it extra torque to haul the big loads it needed. Let's roll underneath here so I can show you what I'm talking about. So under here is where we can see all the fun stuff happening. This is the portal axle setup that was taken from the wartime Kugelwagen. Now here's how it works. You've got a drive shaft coming from a transaxle driven by the engine. And you'll see the drive shaft is actually higher than the center of the wheel. Normally a drive shaft would go right into the center of the wheel. The reason this one doesn't is because behind here there's a little box with 2 gears in it. 1 gear up here and 1 gear below. This multiplies the torque from the engine so the car can actually move more stuff, move heavier stuff because it has more torque. And a fun side effect about all this is when you're in a bus and you step on the gas to accelerate, the back end will raise up a little. It's raising up its butt as it tries to go a little bit faster, which is never very fast, but it's a little bit faster. It's fun, it's clever, and it really helped make the bus what it is. Volkswagen used a lot of parts from their general parts bin to build these things. This is the standard headlight that was used on a Beetle, but it's actually rotated 90 degrees. So it would have been upright this way on a Beetle, and then they just put it sideways to use on the bus. These also are the same headlights that were used on the Porsche 356 and then later the 911. So there's at least one part that you can share between a Porsche 911 and a VW Microbus. So inside, these buses are shockingly roomy. They're not big at all on the outside. Remember, the wheelbase is only the same as a normal Beetle, but there's just so much room in this whole thing. So there's multiple rows of seats. These things were used as like buses to take people from airports. They got converted into ambulances. They got converted into, of course, campers famously because, you know, they had the pop-top camper versions. And they're just really pleasant spaces to be in. It's open and airy. Plus, there were versions like this one that had these 21 windows, these extra windows, and you could get them with this amazing, huge sunroof. You could push this huge canvas sunroof back, and then the whole roof is open. It's bigger, more area than like most convertibles have in like a minivan. This was supposed to be like a normal family minivan, and it could turn into basically a convertible van. I love it. It's fantastic. And this same hole, this is where the pop tops went when they made it into campers. So it was actually a really useful thing no matter what. And look, there's grease that they use to keep it lubricated that you can get all over your arms too if you want to. So that's an extra bonus. A really common modification you would see on buses throughout the years was they would mount the spare tire on the nose of the car. This was partially just to get it out of the way and partially for a little bit of safety because really there was nothing else in front of you but a thin piece of sheet metal. So having a rubber tire there, better than nothing. But originally the tire would actually have been stashed behind the front seat in a little nook for it right here, which is pretty cool. This particular old bus that VW has in their heritage collection is a really nice one. And it has a few options that are very desirable among all the bus people. And one of them is these, they call them safari windows. And they are a windshield that you could raise up, like all the way open. You can tighten it down here. And I think this would be, I can't imagine you'd want to drive with these things open. Even at the low speeds a bus goes, that's still, that would still be a lot. But it is pretty damn cool. You could drive around like this if you really liked, eating bugs fresh from the air. Driving one is fun. You have to know what to expect when you're driving an old bus like this. For one thing, you're not going to expect a lot of speed or power. But that doesn't mean they're not fun, because they certainly are fun. They're easier to drive than you'd think. Like, you're high up, the visibility is fantastic. Like, everywhere you look around you, there's windows. The steering is actually pretty light and easy, and once you remember that the front wheel's under your butt, you just kind of have to square that in your head, so if you're parallel parking or something, you know where that point of turning is going to be. And there is no hood, of course, and that means your driving position is really interesting. It's a very magic carpet kind of feel to this thing. For one thing, the steering wheel is nearly horizontal. You're driving it kind of like you would a city bus. And that actually makes sense because city buses, the large kind that have engines in the back, are really just like larger versions of this microbus design. Sure, I mean, there's safety concerns considering that I can actually see the back of the headlight buckets right by my foot here, and if I hit anything, it's not going to be good because literally the crush zone are my knees and groin. But at the same time, not having a hood does make you drive safer because you are right there on the front of this thing, hanging out with everything coming at you, so you're not going to get complacent when you're in a car like this. Also, in the Volkswagen tradition, when you turn on the turn signal, there's only one arrow that blinks on your dashboard, but in the Beetle, that one arrow is like one double-headed arrow. Here, they kind of fool you a little bit because it's split, so it looks like two arrows, but no, they're still too cheap to give you a second bulb. It's still just one blinking thing. You know which way you push the lever. You'll be fine. This one also is in the era before they decided they needed to label anything on a dashboard, which is peculiar. So many old cars before like 1970 were like this. So you just have plain ivory colored knobs. I think, but there's only like two of them. So you just do it once. You realize, oh, that's the lights or those are the wipers. You figure it out. Also, as you drive around in a bus like this, it's bright orange and white. It's two-tone. It's friendly looking. Everybody waves. Everybody likes it. Nobody has a bad association with a bus. And it makes sense why these things got so popular among young people when they were, out in like the 60s and 70s, because it's really a mobile room. And that's what you want when you don't have your own space to live. When you're a teenager, what would be better than your own mobile room? You can just take wherever you want and do all the things that your mom won't let you do in your house, like drugs and sex and all those things. Now, of course, the downside of putting a box on wheels is that the aerodynamics you'd think would be terrible. And that's the other fantastic thing about the bus. So, when they first built their early prototypes, the coefficient of drag in them was 0.75, which is about as good as a brick would be. It was terrible. In fact, it was bad enough that the Volkswagen engineers used a wind tunnel at the nearby University of, I think, Braunschweig, and they put the bus in the wind tunnel and made adjustments. They made the windshield more of a V, they rounded off some corners, and they got the drag coefficient all the way down to 0.44, which is actually better than the Beetle's, which is 0.48, and is on par with a car like the Jaguar E-Type, which is about 0.4 something. So that's kind of amazing, because to look at this thing, you would think it would be terrible in the wind, but actually, it's not. They actually thought it through, and it's pretty good. And I love these things. I've always loved these things. These things are such an icon of like strangeness and counterculture and all that, but at the same time, they're incredibly rational vehicles. This was a vehicle that was designed to do a job more than anything. The idea that it has like significance as this kind of hippie icon is something that came much, much later. The origins of this thing are absolutely 100% utilitarian. The last rear-engined old-school microbus was actually made in Brazil as late as 2013, but they've been gone from America for a long, long time. And Volkswagen has been teasing the idea of a new bus since at least 2001 with prototypes. And they've made many, many prototypes, and people have gotten excited every time. But what's great is now it's actually finally here. The ID Buzz is the electric version of the old microbus, and the obvious influences are very clear. You can see it's still got the two-tone design. It's actually rear engine, just like the old bus was, but it's an electric motor now instead of an old flat four. But they've done a fantastic job in giving this thing all of the character and charm of the old bus while still feeling really modern. These things are great. I actually drove one all around Denmark when it launched, and they drive great. They feel airy and open inside just like the old one, but it's all modern, all electric, and it's pretty fantastic. So, bus isn't dead. It's kind of fun with this giant steering wheel. Like, you don't have to have power steering in something like this when your steering wheel is this big, because you have all the leverage of a massive wheel. And it's fun. Like, this is a huge steering wheel. And it makes you feel like, you're kind of like captaining a ship when you're piloting this thing. What's fun about being in a bus, though, is you can race almost any car off the line, and you'll be the only one who knows you're in a race. So there's no, no tension, no pressure. And you might occasionally win if the other person, is on their phone and doesn't start till you're 2 car lengths ahead of you. Then you'll win.